Hi Scott, how are you? What an honor to have you today here. We are extremely happy that you are on this Possible Impact Day, Barcelona. So how are you? How is everything in the century?
It's an honor to be here. I appreciate you including us in the conversation. And before I continue, I apologize for the background noise. I am here in the middle of Elephant Sanctuary, Brazil, and lots of roosters. And right now we have some macaws in the trees above my head. So it's sanctuary life, but they will override the conversation sometimes. But that's what happens when you put others in front of us.
I'm pretty sure all the people in the audience wants to be there with you, and we're really glad that you're enjoying that paradise for us.
It's a great place to be, and happy to share a little bit of it with you.
Today we are here to speak about how to move from stories to action, Scott. And in order to have a positive impact in the world by changing the narratives in the world of media. So tell me how you see the world today in terms of media and communications, how we can address these challenges that you are fighting against in order to empower them through the world of media and communication.
I mean, the world of media and communications, it's pivotal to open dialogue, to bring new ideas to the table. I mean, if we don't have access to media and media doesn't have access to new stories and different stories, we're limited in what we are inspired by. And the media is pivotal to open minds to what's happening around the world, and all the great projects, all the incredible people that are trying to make positive change. And so we fully embrace your work and your mission to share the stories, and to, as you said, to empower people. And we confront people a lot of times, or encounter people a lot of times like, I wish I could do what you do. I wish I would have made different choices. Well, we can. You can make a different choice tomorrow. You can make a different choice today. um, don't be afraid of it not working. And getting that message out or sharing these stories with these success stories is part of inspiring people to get out and make that positive change.
How do you move from that moment to the amazing impact you are having today with your mission?
Yeah, the mission has actually been pretty standard in that let's try to make a positive difference for as many elephants as possible. We're not setting a mission to save 10,000 elephants. We're not setting a mission to end all captivity. We're trying to be here for those elephants that we can help. And that mission is really hasn't wavered since way back at the beginning of the sanctuary in Tennessee. And our mission now has a broader scope, but it's still the same underlying principle. Let's try to help as many elephants as we can. And now we're working here in Elephant Sanctuary, Brazil. Our nonprofit is Global Sanctuary for Elephants. We exist to help create sanctuaries internationally. We have a tremendous amount of experience and knowledge that we have gained through our years of doing this type of work. And we're here in Elephant Sanctuary, Brazil right now, trying to build the foundation, build the facilities, train the team, help them understand what it means to live the life of sanctuary for these elephants. It is a full life dedication. It's a lot of nuances. It's a lot of details. It's understanding the fine points of who elephants are. And that takes time for people to understand. So we're here in Brazil right now trying to help this team grow and evolve. And as they start to be able to stand more on their own, that's going to open up the corridor for us to take the next steps forward to help other organizations do the same thing. The reality is it is extraordinarily difficult to do this work. It is, sometimes you want to cry, and sometimes you want to beat your head against a wall, and sometimes you want to run away. And then you look out the door and you see what it means to give these elephants this life. And you see that spark, and you see the rejuvenation, you see the transformation in their eyes. And that makes all the difficulties, all the bureaucracy, all the headaches, and all the sleepless nights, and the tremendous amount of responsibility. It makes all that kind of go away because you see the positive impact. And I think you also have to realize that the big part of our work is building a family of supporters, of colleagues, of teammates here in Brazil that help push that work forward, because nobody can do it on their own. I think people get intimidated by that also. They think, well, how can I do this? Well, you can't on your own. You can't, but you can take the first step, and that first step inspires somebody else, which inspires somebody so forth. And before you know it, you have a large group of supporters making this work possible around the world.
So, Scott, across the filming, we saw all your decisions based on what elephant needs. It's not about humans, it's not about organizations for you. It was always about the elephants. So, I want to ask you, how do you make something so complicated look so simple?
Oh, I think it's just delusion. You know, it is complex. It is, you know, working with elephants and being here for them and helping them through this process is an incredibly nuanced. It's incredibly complex. Knowing when to step forward, when to step back, when to kind of push them to stand on their own, and when to be there for them to lean on you. This, of course, you know, not physically leaning on you, but when are you there to be that calming voice, and when are you there to say, no, you've got this, you know, go be with your friends and help them evolve and grow, you know, and understanding when to do nothing. You know, that becomes really nuanced when you're dealing with some of these elephants that are working through the recovery, you know, and this is a little bit different than what you were talking about when you're dealing with the recovery of trauma. It is so vastly different with every individual, and it's very vastly different with every given day. Can change and evolve. You know, how I do things today with an elephant like Lady, who is very nuanced and has a lot of trust issues. How I do it today is going to be different than how I do it tomorrow. And sometimes when you approach her and you start to do something you've done 10 times, you realize on the 11th time, today's just not the right day. I'm just going to sit with her today. I'm not going to ask her to do anything. We don't need to trim your feet. We don't need to work on any of the behaviors for your medical, you know, medical testing. We can just be here today. And when to be there in that scenario and when to ask them for more is nuance, is details. But those nuances build the trust and the confidence that allows them to recover and open up and feel safe in this human world. Sanctuary is amazing, but it is still a human-dominated world. So when you go back to your question of how do you keep it simple for the elephants, you know, it's what we always have to go back to. When in doubt, as you're going through all the options that we have in front of us before every day, what is it that they need? What do we need to do for the organization to help the elephants in the best way possible? What do I need to do for each individual elephant to help them in the best way possible? Multiple avenues that we can take, but if you try to keep that at the core of everything, then you know you're keeping on track with mission. And unfortunately, many organizations get off track with mission because there's a huge scope of work to be done and many things to get distracted by. But I think that's one of the things that we embrace most with our board of directors and the fundamental people that are at the core of our organization. They are always all here together with that same commonality of we have to put them first. And when you do that, everything else does fall into place. It's not easy. It's not simple. I mean, it is highly complex, but when you have that fundamental element that you hold true to your heart in everything that you do, the rest falls into line.
Speaking about the issue of captivity itself, Scott, how many threats these elephants have across the region and in the world? What is the elephant situation right now in the world?
I mean, you know this, Martin, it's overwhelming. You know, what they endure is completely overwhelming. It's unfathomable how they survive in captivity. You know, we'll separate the elements for this discussion because my background is with captive elephants. Of course, there's a whole different element trauma and crisis dealing with wild habitats and land encroachment and human elephant conflict and all those, that very complex side as well. But for this discussion, we'll stick to the captive side because that's where my life has been spent, and it's where my knowledge base is. And in captivity, the situation is grim. Elephants continue to live in abysmal conditions. You know, we were just talking about it last night, how sanctuaries are often held to a much higher standard, you know, on every aspect. You know, we put ourselves out there of being something that we set our higher standard for ourselves, but even what is required from regulators, from sanctuaries is different than what is required from zoos. You know, we have regulators that come in that want to look at all of our medical records and every little detail, which is fine. Of course, we have that. But in zoos, many times these elephants arrive here and they have after 10, 15, 16 years, they have less than 1 page of medical records. Tests that haven't been done in decades, footwork that hasn't been done because they don't know what to do. And people go back to, oh, but they're nice people and it's a nice zoo. Yeah, I like the people. It's a nice people. I'll go have a beer with them, but you're neglecting your elephant, and that's got to change. We have to put their well-being first. And unfortunately, it's still not. I had somebody come to visit a while ago. She's doing a research on elephants in throughout Brazil. And she said, I'm blown away by what your facility does for elephants. There's nothing that compares, but we still need elephants in zoos to educate people. And this mindset is the fundamental thing that needs to change. They don't need to be in front of our face to learn from them. In fact, we're doing a disservice to our own education by maintaining them in this atmosphere, because you're not looking at an elephant, you're looking at a prisoner. You're looking at the shell of a beautiful, majestic being that can express who they are. If you want to see an elephant, let's put them in healthy environments, and then you get to see how they transform. And when you see them in the sanctuary environment, you see how they transform, that's when you get to see their true essence. So it's grim what's happening in captivity. Fortunately, and let's point to Argentina, Argentina is making positive change. Look at the two most prominent zoos in Argentina, are former zoos, now eco parks, with Mendoza and Buenos Aires. They are making monumental change at tremendous expense to send as many animals as possible to accredited and high caliber sanctuaries around the world, because they know they can't do justice by them. And this realization of this was the first step. And a lot of zoos will say, yes, we know we can't do right by them, but this is the best we can do. No, it's not the best you can do. Look at this incredible, inspiring action that's happening in Argentina. They said our best isn't good enough, so we're going to put an end to it, and we're going to send these animals to places that can do right by these animals. It's their responsibility. It's their mission. If they look back at the core of what the mission is for those zoos, it really was they were failing the mission to provide the best possible life for these elephants, or these animals, not just elephants, and they're making a positive change. And for me, that is the future. It is the future of realization of what we can't do, and instead of stopping there, saying, let's take it one step further. And if we can't do this, let's send these animals to somewhere who can.
Across the filming of Caravana, we saw how complicated it was to film the release of these elephants during the COVID-19 crisis. So when the pandemic started, everyone in the world was saying that we're going to learn something from this. Do you think that we are right on that quote? Do you think that we are learning something from this?
No, with certainty, we have to have hope for that there's positive change that comes out of it. I think there's a large percent of the population that has realized that we need to do better. That we have to look at things in a different light. And that pandemic and the restrictions that put on so many lives, I think did cause a lot of people to reassess what is important, reassess what is valued. And I'm hopeful that people are not going to fall right back into the mainstream, all about me, all about us again. Sure, there's going to be a percentage of the people that are going to do that, but I'm hopeful that people are going to maintain that open heart for positive change, and realizing an open heart for what really matters in life. We've encountered a lot of people that have said, I'm not going to go back to my old job because I realize it's not my heart's work. I want to do something meaningful. I want to do something powerful. And I hope that people can continue going down that trajectory. Sometimes when you do that type of work, you don't have the financial luxuries that you have. You don't have the freedom of time that you had in your previous job. But when you do this type of work, and when you do something that is of value to make a positive difference, there is no amount of time, there is no amount of financial reward that is superior and outweighs the positive impact you had when you're doing some work of value.
In terms of the future, Scott, I find your leadership very special. And in particular, you're fighting against the system without confrontation. You don't fight to organizations, you don't fight to people. It's like you convince them by showing them how things are possible. So what else we can do in order to help these elephants across the region? What remains to be done?
I mean, we rarely get anywhere by fighting. It creates anxiety, it creates animosity, it closes doors. Sure, we have strong opinions about it. You know, we have very strong opinions about what is right or wrong for elephants. But the reality is, the only way we're going to move forward is through the continued demonstration of what the value is when we change these elephants' lives. For me, the biggest impact I've seen for my 35 years of working with elephants, the greatest impact I've seen is when people see the transformation of these animals. When they see it through video, when they see it through, you know, photos, and they see the difference that sometimes 2 or 3 days in the light in the eyes of these elephants, that helps to open up eyes and minds to a new possibility, you know, and realize that there's so much more happening in these lives and in these sacred souls than we see in these captive environments. A lot of the resistance that we see for these change comes from the people that are working within these facilities. Not always, sometimes as the general public also, but a lot of it's a lack of understanding, a lack of education of what sanctuary really means. And sometimes it is fear that doesn't let them open up their mind. One of the first few things that we hear when people are resistant to moving elephants, they will say, you know, they're going to die in transport, or they're not going to know how to adapt. You know, and there's no basis for this. And when you educate people about what is true, when you have this experience of dozens of elephants, not only to our sanctuaries, but other sanctuaries around the world that have transformed, that have adapted, that have sometimes adapted, as with Mara, almost instantaneously, you know, and they did incredibly well throughout the journey. When you show these examples, it opens minds through telling the truth, you know, just tell it how it is. And one thing that we're really keen on here is being honest with both sides. A lot of people tell these stories of sanctuaries of being, you know, roses and butterflies and everything wonderful. And it's not always that. Sometimes it is a struggle. You know, sometimes they do get sick. Sometimes they only live for 3 months of sanctuary because they arrive in such horrific conditions. But let's tell the whole story, the truth of the story, and not leave anything unveiled. Not leave anything veiled, I'm sorry. And, you know, that opens doors. That opens doors when we go to these zoos, when we go to the other facilities, you know, and we speak transparently and we speak honestly and we show these examples. It helps to open minds and open dialogue to a new possibility that they were previously closed for.
Scott, we just saw the new trailer of Caravana. Why do you think these kind of movies are so important for society? And why it's so important to understand and have empathy about how the elephants feel?
You know, I think there's a couple of elements to this for me. One, I don't know how we can ever fully put ourselves in their place because we're not in their minds. They have a way to process and tolerate and segregate different steps of a journey better than we do. You know, we are, as humans, we tend to have a lot of self-pity. I can't imagine being in a cage for 5 days on the road. How horrible must that be? In our mind, yes. But when you see how they tolerate it, it's impossible for us to understand what's really going through their head. But they tolerate it with remarkable ease. We see the noise, we see this crate, we see this visual image that is intimidating, but they don't seem to feel that way. They may be feeling that way, but they also, I think they're processing it differently than our selfish human minds, self-centered human minds tend to do. I think they sense the bigger picture. I think they sense the bigger step forward, the bigger step in the journey, the bigger purpose with this. That said, to see this journey, and when you see what happens when these elephants finally get to the sanctuary, when you see where they were before and you see the light in their eyes, and you see Mara, who was essentially solitary for the last 25 years or 15 years, prior to coming to the sanctuary, and you see her living side by side with two beautiful friends. When you see elephants that come from 40 years of isolation and they turn into a mentor, it's impossible to deny the positive impact that we can have by promoting change and taking a chance on something that is beautiful and not living that fear of failure. I think it does open minds our possibilities well beyond what we're doing here. This is just one part of the work that needs to be done in the world, and a small part of that. And when people see these stories and see these videos and movies and start understanding more comprehensively all that goes into all that's taken away from them and all that they can be returned into, I think it's inspiring. It's impossible not to be inspired by it. With Pelusa, I was actually just looking at some photos of her feet again yesterday. We were demonstrating to somebody who's having an elephant in Nepal who has some foot issues. I don't know how that girl lived. I have no idea how she survived as long as she did in the state that she was in. And for her, it was too little too late. A lot of people came together for her, but we just didn't have enough time. The reality is change was needed. Change was necessary for her 10 years prior, and she could have had a few good months here at the sanctuary if bureaucracy had not stood in the way. But there was nobody that was going to be able to save her. She was too far destroyed by captivity, by our own self-serving needs, desires, I should say, not needs, our own self-serving desires. And one of the most inspiring things that came from that is also a little bit heart-wrenching. But when we shared her story on our social media, people responded saying, I helped kill her because I also wanted to go see her. And by wanting to go there and see her, you're putting money into the coffers that are making that life possible and supporting that type of life, that type of imprisonment and confinement and negligence. And while yes, that person is they helped kill her. The reality is yes, but at the same time, it's not just their fault. We all know better. We all know that we have to make better choices. We have to make better choices with carbon emissions. We have to make choices on positive choices in so many ways, so many things, aspects of our life. And one of those is recognizing the negative impact of our selfish choices, such as I want to go see an elephant. It's not our right just to be able to go see an elephant, and by making them accessible, we continue to diminish their value. That said, zoos are changing. The zoo model is changing. People are opening up their eyes to different possibilities, and we just need to keep that trajectory moving forward. We have to keep pushing that envelope of change, whichever way possible, and things will change, for these animals. It sometimes seems like, again, an impossibility, but if you look at what's happening, using Argentina as an example again, when you look at happening, change is happening, and sometimes it is going to be too little too late. Pelusa, Mary, so many others that did not make it to the sanctuary, but we still have time to make a difference for those that are still there.
Okay, my friend, we are almost in the end. We're really happy to have you here again. If you have any message that you want to share with all of us, any final message, what will be?
I'm in a bubble. I live in a bubble of sanctuary. And, when I think about change in the future, for me, everything goes back to that central focus on what it means for changing the future of elephants. And, and on that note specifically, changing the future of elephants, it's just keep opening your heart, keep opening your mind. If you have anything you can do in your life that inspires you to do something positive, do it. You don't know where it's going to go. You don't know what pathways are going to lead before you. You don't know who's going to join you and open up the next door to make a bigger and more profound positive difference. Just don't be afraid to take those next steps. I have no idea what the future holds, but if we continue to do that, if we continue to make a positive difference wherever we can, there's no other way to go but up.
Well, Scott, thank you, my friend. We are very, very, very happy and honored to have you here today. Thank you so much for participating on this Possible Impact Day and this inspiring day for all of us. We are very excited to see you again in the row with the elephants and for the release of Pocha and Guillermina and for the launch of the movie next year. So in the name of all of us, in the name of all the audience and all the Possible team, we want to send you a big hug and a big thank you for all the things, the amazing things that you and your amazing team are doing for all these elephants across the region. Thank you, my friend.
Well, thank you. I appreciate your words kindly. And from all of us, all of our roosters and chickens and all the wildlife are here, we send hugs back to you. Yes, we hope to meet on the road again soon for another journey to sanctuary. In the meantime, wherever we step forward, we're stepping forward together. We're all on the same path and we're all on the same journey to make a positive difference for these elephants. And we're thrilled to be along this journey with you.